I love how my colleagues on the picture department will read a painting, so they're looking at what the colours mean, what the symbolism means, and sort of telling the story because of that. But you can read ceramics as well. What do you read into these?
First thing I think of is they don't match.
Okay, because of the brown and the turquoise on the saucer?
Yeah,
okay.
That's the first thing I think about them. And then I recognise the symbol on the front of them.
So where did you find them?
Well, a cardboard sale. I was doing cardboard sales. I quite like making afternoon tea at home, and I was looking for a cake stand, and I bought a couple of different boxes just of crockery, to be honest.
But your initial thought was, they don't really match. Well, they do match, first of all. I mean, this is the right pattern. And these are cups and saucers from a White Star ship.
Okay.
So, not the Titanic. I mean, that would be quite difficult. I mean, if they were from the Titanic, I would be standing back and saying, these are worth a lot of money.
Of course.
But they could have been from the Olympic or the Britannic, the sister ships, which, of course, were virtually the same. And all the White Star lines had this White Star china. These were from the first class accommodation. So if you went down for breakfast, went for afternoon tea, these are the cups you drink from. And of course, what's great about, when I said earlier about reading, the shape of them, have you ever thought about why they're that shape?
Not really.
Well, you are an elegant Edwardian lady in your beautiful lace with your hat and your parasol, and you're coming down for breakfast, and of course the ship is swaying a bit. Your tea is going to be swaying the same, but of course with this curved bit, the tea will slosh and go back in.
Wow.
So it won't come over your lovely dress. But the awful thing is, they're not actually that nice to drink from because, of course, the cup is curving away. In the design tray, it's called lip feel. So a cup should normally sit on your lip, but of course this curves away. So it must have been a bit weird. I mean, it feels slightly uncomfortable. Of course, it feels daft drinking when there's no tea there. But
the flag on the side of that cup is not decoration. It is a company's signature. In the late 1860s, a Liverpool shipowner called Thomas Ismay bought the name and the house flag of a failed shipping line and rebuilt it into the White Star Line. The flag came with it, a red swallow-tailed pennant carrying a single white star. It flew at the masthead, and it was painted, printed, and fired onto everything the company owned, right down to the tea service. The ships themselves were built across the Irish Sea at Harland and Wolff in Belfast. And in 1934, White Star was absorbed into Cunard, which is the quiet detail that matters here. From that year on, no more of this china was ever made. Everything that exists came off a ship, a warehouse shelf, or a steward's cupboard, and the supply has only ever gone one way since.
But these are absolutely right, and they've put a lot of thought into the designs. And because of that association with the Titanic, which was built just up the road in Belfast, these are valuable.
Okay.
Even though you thought they didn't match.
Yeah.
So your 4 mismatched cups and saucers, £2,000.
Seriously?
£500 each.
Oh my goodness, that's so exciting.
So well played.
Wow, well, thank you.
For all, these cups are £500 each. If you were to go down to the wreck of the Titanic, those cups from the Titanic itself would be tens of thousands of pounds. And that's the magic of provenance.
Well, in these lovely surroundings of Campden Verandah, we've seen butterflies, bees, and also dragonflies fluttering around, and then something beautiful has just landed on this cushion here. Tell me about it.
So this is a brooch, but I gather it also can be used as hair jewellery, and it was given to my Belgian grandmother from my grandfather, who was also Belgian. They lived in Brussels. She was born in 1900, and unfortunately she died when she was 37 in 1937, and my mother was the youngest of her 6 children.
Right.
This brooch was given to my mother, and then my mother gave it to me.
Oh, how lovely. What a gorgeous gift to get, isn't it?
Yes.
It really is. It dates from 1860 to 1870, and it's a wonderful work of art in many ways, because as we can see, when you pick it up, it flutters, and it's set on this amazing spring, which basically allows the movement as we see here, and it works particularly well when they are set as hair ornaments, because you would have it at the back of your head, and as you would walk along, then the bee or the butterfly, as sometimes they were also set, would just flutter in the hair. And the Victorians absolutely adored anything to do with nature and insects. I mean, things that normally would shy away from suddenly became the height of fashion during that period. Have you had the pleasure of wearing it?
I have worn it on a couple of occasions, and also my sister has actually worn it as well.
Yeah, and did you wear it as a hair ornament or as a brooch?
I didn't dare wear it as a hair ornament because I thought it might fall out, and then so I did wear it as a brooch.
We wouldn't want that, would we?
Yeah.
Now, this is the brooch fitting, and it's what we
Yeah.
call a brooch harness fitting, and it just screws into the back, just as the hair ornament has done here. But the combination of stones is really pretty as well. We've got diamonds in the wings and at the top of the body there, and then the main stone in the body, it looks very purple, but it's got quite a strong pink coming through it as well. And so in first instances you might think it was an amethyst, but it's actually a garnet. And garnets come in a whole variety of colours, from green through to a very, very deep dark red. It's associated with love, devotion and power as well. So again, you've got a lovely, wonderful brooch in that respect.
Look at how the wings sit slightly proud of the body. That is deliberate, and it has a name. The stones are mounted on fine coiled springs so that the whole insect shivers with every movement of the wearer, a technique jewellers had used since the 1700s to make gemstones catch candlelight. By the 1860s, when this was made, Britain was in the middle of a craze for insects in jewellery, driven by the same public appetite for natural history that filled the museums. The bee had a second life too. Napoleon took golden bees as an imperial emblem for his coronation in 1804, after hundreds of them were found in the tomb of Childeric, a Frankish king buried in the 5th century. Bees meant industry, empire, and immortality all at once. What decides the value of a piece like this is whether the springs still work and the original fittings survive, because both are tiny and both were usually the first things to go.
So it really is utterly stunning, and it's just a joy that you've brought it along today, really.
It's interesting what you said about Napoleon, because I know my grandfather was actually quite a fan of Napoleon.
Really?
So, yes.
And with regard to value, something like this in an auction environment today would fetch round about £2,000.
Oh, gosh. Thank you very much. That's
My
very
pleasure.
interesting.
You've watched hundreds of these moments. The ordinary object. The jaw-dropping value. But here's the question we never ask: what's sitting in your home? You don't have to wait for the roadshow to come to your town. In seconds, Velqo tells you what it is, when it was made, and what it could be worth. It's like having the roadshow in your pocket. Open the App Store and search Velqo. Velqo. Or point your phone at the screen. You might be sitting on a fortune.
Good grief. My goodness.
You brought along this very pretty, small dish, but I think you know who made it, don't you?
I think it was made by a Guild of Handicraft somewhere near the beginning of the 20th century.
Absolutely. And how did you come to get it?
It's given to us by my Auntie Jean, properly my great-aunt. She was born in Fife in 1912 and then subsequently moved to Edinburgh and looked after children, families, and then ultimately old ladies. And it was one of these old ladies that she looked after who gave her this plate that she then gave to us as a family.
What a fantastic present to have.
Absolutely.
You're correct in saying that it was made by the Guild of Handicrafts. And the Guild of Handicrafts was started in London by Charles Ashby. He was one of the pioneers of the arts and crafts movement. He was a great follower of William Morris and John Ruskin. The arts and crafts movement was all about a reaction to machines. They wanted to produce things in the old-fashioned hand-raised way. And if you look at this dish, you'll see all the hammer marks all around it. And that just shows that it was a flat sheet that was hammered up into the shape required. As you say, it's got the maker's mark, G of H, Guild of Handicrafts at the top, and the date letter for 1904. But what is particularly nice about your dish is that it has these 3 enamel little bosses on here. That is quite rare. You normally get stones.
Right.
Cabochon stones, sort of rounded stones set into the side of mustard pots and things like that. Then you've got what I think they're poppies behind them.
The guild that made this dish only existed for 20 years, and it spent them in 2 very different places. It began in 1888 in Whitechapel, in the poorest part of East London, as a workshop that trained local men and boys in metalwork and taught them alongside the trade. Then, in 1902, the whole operation was moved out of the city altogether, the workshops, the tools, and around 150 craftsmen together with their families, to a disused silk mill in Chipping Campden, a small wool town in the Cotswolds. It was an experiment in taking craft out of the slums and putting it back in the countryside, and commercially it did not survive. The guild went into liquidation only a few years later. A London date letter for 1904 places this dish squarely in the Campden years, made by hand in a Gloucestershire mill, in the short window when the idea was still working.
So you've actually got quite a rare dish here. Everything is right about it.
That's good.
And collectors really go for rarities and things in good condition. If the enamel was chipped or broken, the price drops by half. Has anybody ever looked at this or given you any idea what it might be worth?
No, not at all.
Well, I think at an auction, you could easily get £2,000.
Good grief. My goodness. I didn't expect that. So she did have an eye for things, my aunt.
She certainly did.
Were they mounted up by the family?
No, my mother bought that as a piece. Mm-hmm. She was a lady earning money in the late 20s, early 30s.
That was wonderful.
When there was a depression on. And so she bought small items that took her eye, and that was one of them.
Well, I think it's quite right to take her eye. I mean, it's an exemplary collection of Neapolitan cameos from about 1880. And they're the sort of cameos that were brought back from the Grand Tour and then mounted up in England in gold. And clearly these have not got as far as that. They're neoclassical, we can see that perfectly plainly, and they're carved from shell. Probably the greatest master of carved shell cameos was a man called Tommaso Saulini. And it's perfectly possible that one or two of these could be by him. They're of sufficient calibre. Maddeningly, the only way to determine them is to unset them from the frame and see whether they're signed on the reverse. So probably we will never know.
Every one of those little portraits started life underwater. Shell cameos are cut from the shells of large sea snails, the helmet conch above all, which grow in layers of different colours, a pale outer skin over a darker ground. The carver removes the top layer everywhere except where the figure is to stand, so the white face is left standing proud of its own brown background. Nothing is glued on and nothing is painted. That trade concentrated in one town, Torre del Greco, on the coast below Vesuvius just south of Naples, which had worked coral for centuries and turned to cameos as the tourist trade grew. A school of coral and cameo carving was founded there in 1878 to keep the skills alive, and it is still teaching. Individual cameos of this quality turn up regularly. What is much less common is a whole group of them, cut by the same hand at the same moment, that has stayed together for 140 years instead of being broken up into brooches one by one.
Very high standard of workmanship. What did she pay for it?
I have no idea. No idea.
Very, very difficult to value, really. I think if they turned up as cameos in brooches, one would reckon them between £150 and £200 each. So, goodness me, I don't know what the mathematics is. It looks as if the raw material is worth about £2,000, and as a decorative object, maybe a little bit more, £2,000, £2,500. Terribly difficult to value, rather unprecedented, wonderful to see. Thanks for bringing it.
Thank you very much indeed.
They've been in there and we used to look at them when we were younger, but she passed them down to me and her father used to collect them.
So her father, so we're going back to Grandad, so we're getting back to 1900, aren't we?
That's right.
It's just a treat to see cigarette cards of this quality. Now, Wills and Players cigarette cards are the most common, although they have their rarities. But when you get back to 1900, and then you get a small manufacturer, his cigarette cards are rare because proportionately those cigarettes are smoked far less than the big giants. So now we're looking at cigarette cards here that depict the Boer War. And quite frankly, some of these cigarette cards, although I've been in the business for 50 years, I've never even seen, but I do know the value. These types of smokers by Hutton, they are worth in the region of £35 to £40 a cigarette card each. Oh. Here we have Soldiers of the Century, Hutton's again, small manufacturer, £35 to £40 each. Smith's mistletoe cigarettes, something around about £25 to £30 each. But
cigarette cards were not invented to be collected. They were invented to stop the packet bending. 19th century cigarettes came in flimsy paper wraps, and American manufacturers began slipping a stiff piece of card inside to protect them. Someone realized the blank card was free advertising space, and within a few years it was carrying actresses, soldiers, ships, and footballers, printed in sets so that smokers would keep buying the same brand until they had them all. In Britain, the giants were Wills of Bristol and Player of Nottingham, and they printed in the millions, which is precisely why their cards are the cheap ones today. The scarcity sits with the small regional firms, companies that issued a few thousand of a set instead of a few million, and then went under or were bought out. Add to that the fact that card issues were suspended in 1917 when wartime paper ran short, and stopped altogether in 1940, and you have a market where the make on the back of the card matters far more than the picture on the front.
here we have Clark cigarettes of cricketers. Not that I'm a great cricketer fan personally, but I do appreciate that they are very well sought after and collected. Issued, I think, either 1900 or 1901. You better hold this. You're looking at £100 each cigarette card. You're looking at what? Something in relation to £3,000.
Hold them.
Before you go, a quick word that could save you from a costly mistake. Every week, treasures like the ones you just watched are sold at car boot and yard sales for pennies by people who simply didn't know what they had. Don't let that be you. With Velqo, just snap a photo of anything in your home, and in seconds you'll know what it really is and what it's really worth. And it's completely free. Point your phone's camera at the code on screen now, or search the App Store for Velqo, Velqo, before you let it go.